Hi, everybody. This is Jeff. I want to kind of explain the Carnegie Mellon University Haitian Creole speech data collection kind of method that we used. And it was not only for Haitian Creole, we used it for other languages too. We actually did the same thing for Korean. And I just want to explain this because these are uh, these are in the realistic low data language collection kind of scenarios. This this is not with a huge budget, okay? This is not with a significant travel budget. This is not with things. So I really want to explain how this is done. And and this is the way that you really need to do it when you're doing low data languages, okay? And I want to be very clear about that because if you're trying to if we need for speech data, if we need to have really speech data that is a lot more complex than this gonna you really have to plan a huge budget here, whereas we did this in really low budget situations. I mean, we had some budget, but we were able to do with 5 languages basically for what I think is done for one language, and I want to explain that. Okay, and we had functional prototypes working, so it can be done, and I want to really kind of how this is done. Okay, so so I'm going to explain the Haitian Creole one, and then I'll kind of mention how we improved that with the Korean one. So hang tight here. This can take a little bit of time to explain, but for those of you geeks that really want to know this, this is the deep dive. Okay. Um, so all this was done between, for the Haitian Creole, we did it between November 1996 and November 1998. And this was the Diplomat project was designed to be specifically to test the feasibility for rapid deployment and rapid development and rapid deployment for some wearable bidirectional speech translation systems. Okay, so that's the context: rapid development, rapid deployment. This is not huge time factors here. Now, and we need to have a way to have complete recognition and synthesis systems at acceptable level of quality uh, within really a few weeks after doing the original data collection. And if you do a couple waves, it's ready to run. Okay, just ready to go. And we did this. Okay, we really did it. Um, so the so what we did with the corpus with this was read speech, and we had to choose this approach. Okay, we did try to do transcribed speech. Okay, we take audio, existing audio of natural speech, and then you transcribe it. The Korean, okay, I'll say what we did. The Korean, it took us between 9 and 12 hours per hour of audio speech to transcribe for the Korean. And this is a Korean speaker student that actually can type pretty well, is pretty familiar with the keyboard, can type in their language. That's 9 to 12 hours, okay? And I do a lot of transcribing stuff, and so and working with transcription systems, and that's kind of the high end here. Forget it for Haitian Creole. Just forget it. Okay. It's higher. Okay. Because hard because Koreans you get the situation where you get people that are really familiar with their language really well, and they've grown up from learning how to read and write it when they're young. Haitian Creole, finding the speakers that can even read and write. I could read and write better than most of them. Okay, so this is a real challenge. And even those that can read and write, it's still not a ingrained kind of instinctive thing that they've gone to school with and really well with. Okay, so you need to kind of put this in a situation. That's the 6,000 languages of the world, folks. Okay, so not everybody's going to school, and not everybody's really well. And I really want to emphasize this because this is going to affect how you're going to get the data. So the corpus was read speech. We chose not to transcribe. We could have done that, and it would have just taken one language speech, one language of just doing the transcription for just read of natural speech would have taken the budget of 5 languages, okay, of the entire thing. So just no way we could have done this. So what we did was we used read speech. And that read speech, and I'll explain in a couple of minutes how we got to that read speech, okay? And that means reading out loud speech that is on text that we've already collected. We had 150 native speakers of Haitian Creole that were residing in 3 different countries. And so we did different kind of recording phases. We did one in Pittsburgh, which was in September 1997. Um, and then we did one in Paris, which was in December 1997, and then New York City of January 1998 for the first wave. Um, so those are 45 speakers, and Pittsburgh was fine because we were in Pittsburgh. Okay, so we got everybody. And no, there was a couple towns outside of Pittsburgh. Okay, driving distance, but there was kind of just a few people. And we actually took over our three native speakers and had them do the entire corpus. Okay, read through the entire the red speech part of the corpus through three of them. Then we found a few extra Haitians, but I mean, this is not like we had huge amounts of Haitians in Pittsburgh. Okay. Paris, however, my in-laws live in France. Well, I'm in France, but I was in, my wife and I were traveling back to France every Christmas for, several weeks. So we just took my vacation time, and I would go and record as a number of Haitians that I could find while I was in Paris. So I was on vacation, kind of working vacation. Okay, so use that opportunity because, hey, I'm already making the trip. It's already got my budget for my trip, so I don't have to take money out of my budget to actually make the trip and stay somewhere. Okay, so this is the thing. When you're doing budget, you got to think about this thing. New York City, we did in January 1998 because we were already Chris and I are going to a conference, and there we already had the budget to go to the conference and do things. So we made some arrangements to go ahead and do the recordings with, I think it was Brooklyn College, I can't remember. So we made a little stop to go. We could arrange for a handful of maybe 10 Haitians, 7 I think it was actually at the college there, but just trying to get to organize that's a lot of work, okay, for 10 people, and this was just not sustainable to do this right. Okay, we got 45 speakers out of those 3 locations, and it just wasn't working. Then I tried looking at Miami and places to do it, but just trying to get the student associations, trying to get somebody to sponsor. This is the hard thing, and organize it, sponsor, organize, and market it. That's the hard part of it, folks. The real hard part of it. So, and there were sometimes I just know we can't do it because it's just I didn't see the traction. I didn't see it was doing it. I couldn't do it from a distance. It was just way too complicated for me to try to do a distance to the marketing. I had to have to do it. I had to have a lot of people. So finally, I decided to. Okay, I told my boss we need to put the budget in, and we need to make a trip to Haiti. We had to make a trip to Haiti, so I had to find one of the universities there. Did that, and so we had one location, and to do all that, and we were there in March and April. Okay, for about 10 days. And we got 105 speakers in that one in 10 days, so that was a good thing. Now I had to make some, I had to put some money down. I had to make some investments and give a donation to the school, okay? And for all the speakers, for all the sessions, I made it and they made an extra donation for just welcoming us, okay? This had to be done. Now and that was the 4th phase, and that was the 4th and final phase. And we came back, and within 1 week, bam, we had the thing running, a whole speech-to-speech translation system running a week later. Okay, a week later. So this does work. Now, the breakdown of the gender for all the speakers was we had 90 males and we had 60 females, and all those are broken down into we actually knew what they were pretty much all students, let's say high school students to early college. The majority of those 150 speakers were all kind of the late adolescent to early 20s. That was just the population you get that when you're doing this, okay? Going to the universities, and those are the populations you get pretty much in Pittsburgh or the Pittsburgh area. And the Paris, I got a few more people, a little bit older people in Paris, kind of in the 30s. But you just can't get older people, folks. When you start get older people, they can't read. Because that's not what they didn't read and write in the language. So forget all this, having to say we need to have an older population kind of doing this red speech, because it won't happen. So there's going to be reality when you're doing these low data collection things. If you're dealing with languages that are, really low data, I'm not talking just low data, I'm talking literacy. Literacy is a key thing here. And it's great if you can have people that can read. It's hard to find people who can type and actually do data entry. So and type it. So this is a key thing. And then finding younger students, that's really hard to do. Sometimes you want to hold the range of the not just male and female. You want to have the younger age groups and stuff. I know all this because I've done data collection for major languages too, and I know how to do this. But it's these low data languages, and I'm not talking low data literacy challenge languages. Okay, so finding the students, younger students, it's also hard to find kids because they got to get to school, and they got to walk to school and finding the kids that can actually walk to school and will do it. I mean, few kids go to school, so you're getting a very small bit of the population that can actually get to school and can actually read, because they're all walking out and they're all working out in the fields and doing other stuff, and so these are kind of populations that few people get to go to school, and usually they get to school because somebody from Europe or the North America is sponsoring them, like I did. I sponsored a child for 10 years, so that got to go to school. These are the privileged kids. Okay, so all the rest of people don't get to school. So this is kind of your context of it. So finding the young students is tough. Okay, and then you got to go through some of these save the children, compassion, world vision type things if you want to do it. And that takes it. Then you have to go through NGOs, and that's kind of tough too, to have to go through all this paperwork to try to get to do a thing. It's the student population, the older student population, that you're going to be able to find to do these things. That's reality. Okay, I'm just trying to be clear here. That's reality when you're doing these things. If you want to do a quick system, if you got all the budget you want, fine. Okay, do it long term and burn the cash, and and do it, and transcribe. You'll get it. But here, when you've got to do things and do it with a low budget, no way. So we had those in two different directories: all the early recordings of the 45 people, and then all the rest of them to make up for the 105 to make up for the 150 people in a second folder. The way that the material is gathered. Okay, so what we did is we gathered pretty much all of Haitian Creole text, and we were even taking other texts too. So I'm just taking stuff from St. Lucian Creoles and stuff. I mean, and we were scanning stuff. I mean, we were finding anything that we could find. And I already worked my master's, doctorate stuff, so I knew where the newspapers were. I knew all these things were. But then you got to get these texts. I mean, these are newspapers. Okay, so these are newspapers. So you got to scan the newspapers. Okay, back then we were scanning the text, and then we got to deal with the fact that scanning doesn't have the OCR back then. It wasn't that great. There wasn't one for Haitian Creole to start with, so we're using a French one to do it, and it's not that great. So it's got at least got the accent marks, okay, but there's not the accent mark on the O or the A, the grave accent. So you got to have to clean that up, and we do cleanup of the stuff when you're doing the OCR and scanning. So we had to do the cleanup of it to be able to get the things, plus some of the text of the internet, because before Unicode, people would they wouldn't put accent marks in because it couldn't recognize them. So they'd put like backslashes or forward slashes before or after the letter to indicate if it's if it's forward accent, back accent mark, or they put apostrophes before or after. So they're kind of doing these tweaking things to have your page on the internet to be published. So we had to create, character. We had to create kind of accent reinserters or converters to be able to get the text to be able to do it, to be usable. And then we had to do the cleanup of the text and do a review. So this is kind of another reality thing. Getting the clean text to be able to work with is a real challenge for, again, low data, not just low data literacy challenge languages, okay? So what we did is we collected all these texts. We even offered translation, okay? We offered translation to anyone that wanted Haitian Creole translation. We actually recorrected the entire Jesus film because it had been one of the 14 known orthographies from way back when. So we actually converted it into the newer 1980 orthography, 1979 orthography, and then we rechecked it and stuff. So and we gave it back a clean version so we could use their audio data along with the corrected transcript of the audio. So that was one of the ones we actually had transcribed. Okay, the one that we did have transcribed text. We We had the Bible, and okay, people can say, the Bible. Hey, but the Bible is the first thing you usually get. Folklore stories in the Bible, and hey, they get some for speech. It's got some pretty funky names in there in the Old Testament, so those are great kind of different character combinations for the sounds. So that really helps when you're doing phonetically rich stuff. That's kind of how it goes. So, just want to kind of give that factor into it too. And and hey, folks, take if you get the multiple version of the Bible, if the language happens as more one version, that's great because you're going to get some different semantic different types of semantic structures and stuff. Don't want to go into all the thematic roles and all the linguistic structure roles, but hey, if you can get multiple versions, it's going to give some different sequences. At least for grammar, if you're doing any kind of grammar or kind of syntax and trying to do that in the analysis as well. Okay, for the speech, not so important. So back to the so we're collecting all these things. We're offering translation of health documents. We did Disney stuff, okay? We did all kinds of stuff. Anything that anybody wanted translation. We were collecting stuff from missionaries. We were collecting stuff from, doing stuff on water irrigation and whatever was available. We were going to translate it and put it in the language. Health documents, public documents, whatever. But the problem is that when you're doing this up front, you want to make sure you get all the agreements. You can use this another time afterwards because that's not what we did. It was all this gentleman's agreement that we were stuck with it at the end because I didn't do all these authorizations so we could publish the data later. That we were just going to use it in our own single system. So that kind of the pet thing. We used sources that were novels, political speeches, newspapers, training manuals, literacy primers, web pages. I mean, everything you can imagine. Okay. Now, the way that we cleaned that up was we actually used two native speakers that read through all of the selected texts, okay, to correct any kind of typographical errors and trying to check all this. And they changed a lot there were foreign loan words that were used. And now this happens, loan words, and this happens. They corrected all those and put them into the Haitian Creole equivalents. So we did that too. We just really made sure that this was no loan words in the text. Okay, they'll at least have written, didn't have those, converted words and stuff. You're going to find a lot of that in Asian languages, okay? We found a lot of that too, especially when the web and stuff, 20 years later. So like getting a lot of more things. And this kind of, we eliminated any really extremely short phrases, like one or two words. We just deleted those, and anything that was super long. Like it was beyond 2 lines of a laptop screen because it wouldn't be good for recording because the sentence would be too long to read out loud. They were eliminated. Now we did have when we were doing, I'm going to say that when we were doing the Newswire translation, which was a huge part of the corpus, we were actually shortening the sentence of the Newswire to make sure that when we were doing the translation part of the corpus, that they would be easy to translate. So we were actually shortening the sentences already after they had collected. And then here, when we're doing working on the speech part, we're reusing the same sentences and kind of going through them again and then selecting those. Okay. Then we took, so everything that remained from that kind of, those review processes right there I've just made, we ended up with about 1.2 million words, okay? And we had 33,000 unique word types, okay? So that kind of gives you the kind of the spread here, okay? And they call it the tokens are repeated. From that material, then the recorded sentence, we used kind of a greedy text selection, method that was able to go through and take the maximum amount of character combinations that were phonetically rich with relative to kind of balanced sentences. So we just wanted to have the shortest amount, the least amount of sentences that could be recorded to cover the widest range of combinations of the characters, phonetically characters, okay? That's an approach. Now, some people said, we want to have more content, much stuff. Yeah, but when you're doing this stuff, you got to make sure that you don't want to record everything, because then you'll never know when to end. So this was an approach we took. It had conditions and constraints, and that is why it's the way it is. And when you're doing any kind of low data language and stuff, and your speakers are going to be difficult to find and stuff, you can't you can't say, oh well, we need to record the entire 1.2 million word database, because you've got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere, and that's what we did. Now we could have done another round. Okay, we could have done an additional round and actually recorded the entire what we should have done. Okay, what we should have done now, backward, hindsight is always 2020 vision. We should have actually also recorded with the two native speakers that we had on site. We should have recorded the entire database of what we had, of the 1.2 million words. That's what we should have done. Okay, then we'd have them more spread, but we didn't. Okay, because we had to do it the way we did it in the time we had. There's a 2-year project. Okay, so it had to happen fast. Then we randomized the sentences after kind of doing that, and we cut them up into subsets of kind of that their speakers would read. The speakers would be able to read out loud, and the whole day was having a 30-minute session. So how many sentences can a normal speaker read in 30 minutes? Now for the Koreans, that was really easy because they're used to reading and writing, right? So that was pretty easy. But believe me, it was a challenge with the Haitians, because we just we did a kind of a couple rounds at the beginning with the invited people, and we were paying them, come have we give them, I don't know how much we're paying them for each session, but it's equivalent like a fast food lunch. That's what we did for the Koreans. Go down to the local Korean fast food place and give them a free lunch. So that's kind of thing. So that's how much it was, and the Haitians is like, it was too long. It was just, they couldn't do that. They couldn't do the same number of sentences in the same period of time. So we had to actually make shorter subsets of sentences for them to read. So if a Korean could read, if a Korean, and here we get some quality control happening in that 30-minute session too. So if a Korean could read 20 sentences in 20 to 25 sentences in a 30-minute period, a Haitian could only read 15. Okay, so we had to kind of readjust all that. Now so the number of sentences that we recorded in a single session by the first 13 speakers kind of ranged from 99 to 231, and that's kind of how we started the kind of the beginning. So we had some subsequent speakers that we basically. So the first session basically we did is we took the speakers that we had, and we had a few of them, but we just tried to do as much as possible. Okay. Then we subsequently broke these into groups because we just found it was way too hard. Just way too hard to do the speakers. And here we said we did roughly between 15 and 25. And that's exactly what it was. 25 was the high end for the Korean, and 15 was the low end for kind of the Haitian Creole kind of situation. And then and that made it easier in cutting that away to have a lot more participation, and just the task went to be better, and it actually gave it also helped the speaker had to actually control how to do kind of the testing things too, and we had to make sure that when we do these one or two sets, sometimes we give two sessions to a speaker. Now we had at least 3 to 4 that were, well, we had 2 of them that did, 2 of our 3 native speakers that did the entire read speech corpus. But not everybody would, they only did like 2 given sentences of these subsets of 15 sentences. If they're a faster speaker, then we give them 2, maybe 3. So kind of we just dealt with that how it is. So there was that. Then the recording. How do you do the recording? And this is kind of a key thing to do as well. So, and I want to put this, and I just how do you do the recording? I want to put you in the context of what we were in. Okay, so and I was when I was in the Korean as well. I mean, when I was going to Oregon on business trips and stuff, or see my family. I mean, if I could get five Koreans, and 2 Haitians or whatever on a trip at a local university, I'd do whatever. Okay, just go record wherever I happen to be. Okay, so I just happen to do that. But But then you got to find a recording place. We don't have studios here. These are not recording studios when you go into places to do. You're using whatever. And I mean, if you're doing that kind of the university lets you borrow a room. So what you do is you got to be doing people in parallel here. So you're doing people parallel in the same room, that two different ends of the room. You're putting tables up on end to kind of make a blocking of using local materials of tables to create walls to actually create so the sound doesn't go to one another. Okay. Um, the Haiti one, okay, at least when you're in the universities, hey, well, the universities in the U.S., you got windows, okay, but I'll tell you, for Haiti, that was a really challenge because we were on like the fourth floor of the building. There's no windows, okay, there's no windows. You can hear the cars honking outside. So you got to deal with that. And it was so warm in Haiti in late March and beginning of April. We had a fan running in the room, and we had it in low speed, so just enough air was circulating in the room, so we wouldn't all like die at the end of the day. Okay, we had bottles of water and everywhere, and you get this little fan running in the band. This fan running off in the corner, far enough away in the room to be able to just get some airflow in there. Okay. And we even put mattresses up, okay, on the walls to block the windows to cut for at least the corner where the side where the cars were driving by, okay. And so this is real. This is the real recording trenches here, folks. I'm just having fun remembering this. Um, so all of you, those of you think that you can just kind of like have perfect recordings. Okay, I've done voiceovers, I've done recording studios. Like this is nowhere close to that. And the things that you deal in the recording voiceover, and people don't have this and don't have a stereo microphone. Hey, you don't care to have a stereo microphone when you're in a low data situation. I mean, just use whatever you can do to get it. You just want it to be well done. You just want to have you need to find the speakers first, and then you got to deal with all the details here. So on top of it, so how did we do the recording of this? Given all these conditions, I'm not going to talk about my Haitian. Okay, my Haitian friends too. You got to think about. Okay, you got to be careful about when you're in missions like this, you can't get sick, okay? You just can't get sick. I mean, we put the whole packet of money down. I told my boss, hey, we're going to make a trip to Haiti, and this is going to take a bit of budget to travel, plus us in hotels and stuff like that. And I brought all my food with me, okay? I brought a suitcase just with food for 10 days. I eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 10 days, okay? I couldn't get sick. I brought all my water with me, bottles of water. I brought canned food, okay, 10 days of canned food and bread, and I brought all my food. And people kind of laughed at me, but hey, I didn't get sick, okay. However, one of my Haitian colleagues who came with me, he got sick the next day because he was eating stuff out in the market, okay. He just his immunity, his stomach had been too adjusted to Pittsburgh food for too long, and he got sick, and so he was out of commission for a day. That's tough because you gotta have the team working, so you gotta make sure that people don't get sick. So you gotta think about that too. If you're going off to countries where, even the bottled water you kind of wonder about. This is the real conditions, folks. Okay, so you got to plan for that too. So you got to be ready to do this, and you got to be ready to do 10, 12-hour days, okay? And on the top of it, you got to be able to review the stuff at night. So I'll come back to the reviewing afterwards, okay? So now I got to remind myself to say that too right after, but the review, the final review and backup, the data backup situation. So each sentence, the speaker would read the sentence out loud for practice. So they'd say it once to practice the sentence first, to kind of get the articulation and the mechanical mood there to get to say it. We didn't no cold turkey stuff. You had to warm them up for each sentence. Then they recorded the sentence, and then we recorded it immediately if a mistake occurred, and we'd have somebody watching and listening. So we didn't let the native speaker do their own quality control. We had another person doing the quality control, okay? And if they pronounced any of the letters wrong, any of them. If a W was pronounced as an R, bam, stop it, do it again, okay? And we did not do what you do in video editing, where audio editing, where you can kind of let them record the whole time and you slice it. That would take too much time. No, it had to be perfect sentences every time. It just had to be all perfect because we didn't want to do editing. You know how much it gets into when you do audio and video editing? Been there, done it. Couldn't go in that direction, okay? Just could not go in that direction. It would just be way too much time to go listen back in. So we had to have exact sentences. They had to be clean on the input level, or we just chuck them out, okay? Throw them out. So, and I didn't want to chuck more data, okay? And I did lose a computer the last day of one. I had 3 computers. Taking computers into a country is a pretty tough thing too, because they want to know why you have 3 computers. So, and make sure you get all your letters and stuff to make sure it's your stuff, and make sure you have money to kind of pay for going from one section of the airport to another with 3 computers. And it helps if you speak the language too, because you can kind of you kind of deal with the people that kind of want to get bribes and stuff. You can at least speak. I mean, all this stuff kind of comes into play too. So we did lose one hard drive of the last computer on the last day, so we lost a little bit of data. So you're gonna kind of be back. We'll get back to the backup stuff at the end of here. So we would have each person reading it out, warm-up sentence, then reading it out loud for practice, and then another person, quality control, watching. So that's why you don't want to have people sick, because you got to have these people watching the other people, what they're saying and stuff, and doing the quality control. And then we'd have them listen to the sentence afterwards to verify that the recorded file actually reflected the written form and was saved. Okay, so this is how it was done. This is quality control here. Okay, we had a pretty simple kind of computer interface that was used to kind of really allow the participants to self-record themselves. So you didn't always have to have a person. You have a person you could trust that could really do the thing. Like our native speakers on site, the Haitians, they do their own recordings completely. I know didn't have a second person kind of shadowing them. We didn't shadow them if we felt that they were able to do it. And then we'd have this kind of a native or near native speaker or anyone present to kind of who understands language to be able to kind of provide the assistance and catch any of the words that are pronounced wrong and stop them. And I had to stop people in the middle of a sentence sometimes. So you can say that out in the street, but not here. You got to pronounce it this way because that's what the letter is and the thing. And so you got to kind of deal with that. Okay. And you got to deal with surprises with the Korean. Now the Haitian Creole is pretty easy. Actually, it's kind of easy to deal with, but the Korean, we had a surprise. I had, we did the same approach for the Korean, and we had students at Carnegie Mellon that were kind of reviewing the content and all that, and then and they were collected from a lot of short stories. The Korean content was actually easier to find. The written content to be able to do this data corpus stuff for the recording part, but so and here's what we did here's how I did it. You got to be good at marketing too to kind of get the data. You got to get a lot of people. So those are the Haitian Creole ones, but I'll say how we did it with the Korean ones. The Korean ones, there were 3 churches, big Korean churches in Pittsburgh. So I go off to the Korean churches and kind of make presentations, and they welcome me in, and Carnegie Mellon's known in Pittsburgh, so that's pretty easy to kind of get welcomed and stuff. I'll go up and say, you got a 3-minute pitch, and the thing is, I'd like to, I'd like to welcome all of the Kim, Park, and Lee families here today, and kind of you got a little relational stuff here, and what we did was, I actually offered to pay for the mission fund by the donations that we would give normally for people to give lunches. We give the same donation amount for the missions fund of the church. Hey, it worked. Okay, it just worked. And we had 400 Koreans in a couple of months. I mean, that was like wow. Whereas we spent 2 years trying to get 150 Haitians. We had 400 Koreans, 350 to 400 Koreans in just a couple of months. Okay, so that's kind of spread the difference you can do. And if you have locations and the churches you go, and hey, they're all there on Sundays, so you go and record them after Sunday service. You go record them. So you got a team of 3 people coming in and recording in different rooms, and that kind of stuff. And and you just make donations, and and you gotta think of how to donate to the things that are interest them. Okay, not think about what you want. Okay, folks, geeks. You got to not think about what you want and what's important for you. You got to think about your target audience and what they want, and you got to find ways to kind of break into their way of thinking, how they are going to want to participate in this thing. Okay, don't think like a geek. Think like a marketer. Think like a salesperson. Okay, so there's kind of skills you got to have too on the team. So, and on top of it, so that's how we did it. And then the last thing I want to talk about here is the kind of the backup thing. You got to think about how you're going to back up all this data. Now, this is 23 years ago, folks. So, and we're in 2021. This is 1998, 1997, 1998. It's okay. If you're only collecting like 45 speakers, no big deal. Make a trip to Paris, record, 15 people during, kind of on vacation. So I'm recording 15, 20 people. No big deal. The hard drive and the computer, and I got an extra hard drive. Hey, but when you're going off to Haiti for a week and you're doing 105 speakers and you have them all doing multiple sentences here, we had to take jazz drives, okay? We had to invest in material. And this is kind of like big, back then it was big. I mean, when you get into teras, that was big, okay? Big data. Whereas today, this is like, hey, everybody's got they got a tera data, kind of drive at home. I got one, one or two or three or whatever. It's no big deal. But back then it was like, that was big data. So, we'd record on the laptops, and then we would back all of it up onto the jazz drives in the evening, which takes time to kind of do the data transfer. It's like the hotels, I was spending hours in the hotels in the evenings just doing all the backups on two different backups, okay? Because this is precious data. Always have two backups in this kind of situation. You lose one, I lost a hard drive. Last day, didn't put in the backups because we left, and one of the hard drives didn't survive the trip. So we lost that one day of recording on that one laptop because it wasn't backed up. All the rest of the stuff been backed up in the evenings. Got to be thinking about this, folks. This is really important stuff. And then I kind of redo some spot checks in the evenings too, because I wanted to make sure that what we had done during the day really would. And I found some things that weren't. We had to kind of delete too, and so this is all kind of the way it is. So this is kind of a quick overview in like under 40 minutes of how to explain this whole thing, and to really tell you how low data and literacy challenge kind of situations are when you're doing speech collection, and when you go tight budget. And hey, if you don't have the millions in the budget to do it, then you got to do it. A few thousands, and this can be done for even less now. With we have a lot better equipment today, and we can have all kinds of crowdsourcing approaches too, and so it's all possible to do this. But you got to really think about all these factors, and I'm thinking this off the top of my head. I could probably think of a dozen other things to say, but I just want to kind of put this into a context. This is what it's like, and you don't always have the best situations. And okay, it's great for like major languages when you get budget to do this. Like I worked at Elder and Elder as technical director. Hey, we had a big budget, so we did this. We did it for all the stuff. But hey, when you don't, you're getting the people you can get, and the systems will be what they are afterwards, and that's what you're going to get. So, and don't try to sell an idea of having speech. Don't try to sell the idea of, hey, we're going to have a perfect speech system for a low data language, a literacy problem challenge one, that you're going to have for a major language. Just don't think they're going to get the same data. So you can't have the same data, and you're going to have to just face that fact. And if you want to do the low data languages, then you got to face that fact. Okay, it's not going to be the same. You're going to have different variables and different factors and kind of different qualitative criteria for what you expect to be able to do for that language. You got to lower your standard here. You got to lower your standard to what you're going to be able to achieve. And in the end, hey, people of the languages that are major languages, they're more critical of their language. But the people if you have a speech recognition system for Haitian, it works. And it's not perfect. Hey, it works. Or if you've got one speaker and for Texas speech, hey, they're glad to have it. Okay, so you kind of have to fix that fact too, and And I would be willing to bootstrap any system and to make it happen for doing the data collection in this way and to make it work. And sometimes you have to tweak it for the text. You have to use it. We were using basically a text speech method to be able to do the data collection for automatic speech recognition. And we were kind of reversing it to be able to do it that way. And it worked. And we had a prototype. And we still have the only existing prototype in the world is on that system because no one else has used the data for the speech models because they're saying it's not enough. Well, it's not true because we had a working prototype working. I just wish I had actually a video of it working. I don't have a video of it working of the demos. We should have done videos of footage of it when it was actually working and our Haitians actually doing it. But I don't have that 23 years later. Yeah, that's how it is, and it can be done, folks. It can be done. That's how I do it. Again, I would not do really any differently except for the things I mentioned how to improve it, but I'd still do the same way. Again, if I just do any language, so with the same approach. And then some of you are asking, I know you're going to be asking how much speech audio data do we have for the Haitian Creole? I mean, this keeps coming up. How much is there? Well, I'd have to go through right now. I was not the one that packaged it at the end. I recorded everything, but then, 12 years later, we had to come back again. I had to be working with students who were, 5,000 kilometers away, and I was just doing it all from, the directory structure and saying, go take this, do this, take this, that. Kind of do all the filtering. They packaged it, so now it's in a few zip files that are like a few gigabytes each of WAV files. These are also all recorded at 44,000. So not 16, not 32. So they're kind of lower. It was the best quality we could use for that, and not over too much quality for the audio sample and size, frequency wise. The amount of data, I mean, they're all WAV files. So what I would have to do right now with my current setup is I would have to go through and download that, and then download it, unzip the whole thing, all these WAV files, raw WAV files, and then I have to go. Right now what I have to do is just copy those and throw them into a video software program in chunks, because if I threw all of them in there, it would crash the program. But then I would have to just kind of throw them all into the media bin, and then just kind of select them and then throw them all down into a track and just see how many hours of data there's. So that's kind of where I have to be here. Sorry for the sound in the background here. And that's what I have to do to be able to get the amount of hours of data. Okay. I'm thinking that we've probably got, I don't know, 500 hours. So that's my guess. I'd have to check it one time, but that's a kind of way. But the data is what it is. Okay. So that's what it is. So we'll have to see with that. Okay. We'll see what it is, and we'll have to unzip it and just kind of. It's gonna take some time to do this, and I don't have the time right now, and that's what it is. And I'm just wanting to see who wants to be interested to start. I don't really want to do all this creating how much data is if someone's not even interested to even take it, because it's going to be a lot of work for me to go do this just to get that. So in my current setup. Okay. So all right. Thanks so much.